Hey everybody, Max Boltman here alongside the Athletics' Corey Pronman and Scott Wheeler and Flow Hockey's Chris Peters for another episode of the Athletic Hockey Show Prospect Series. Lot to get to today. We're going to be talking about the defense class in this 2026 NHL Draft. We're going to be doing a mailbag, a long overdue mailbag. Sorry we waited so long on that. But first I want to start, Corey, you've got a new mock draft and a new ranking out this week. And I want to just start with the ranking here because you've got a tier at 5 at the top. Give us a little bit of a high-level overview on how you view the very top of this draft class.
I think my opinion of the top is kind of similar to what a lot of people I talk to in the league is that I think there's a really tight cluster at the top. And because of that, you could put these players in a variety of orders. I think most teams still have some combination of a defenseman, which defenseman, it could vary. The center, Caleb Malhotra from Brantford, and the two wingers in Gavin McKenna and Ivar Stenberg in one of their top groups, but there could be 2 defensemen in there. There could be 3 defensemen. Some have 4 defensemen. And so I think it creates a lot of interesting debate. And I think you're going to see a lot of variety from list to list. Like we've done a lot of mock drafts recently where we have Stenberg falling to 4 for Chicago, for example. And I've seen that generates a lot of outrage. Like that's where the league, I think, views this draft right now. Is I think there's going to be a lot of teams coming out of meetings that have Stenberg 3, 4, 5, 6 on their list. There's going to be a lot of teams coming out. They're going to have Reed at 2 or Reed at 5 or 6. Like they're going to have Malhotra at 2 or maybe like 3 or 1, and some are going to have him closer to 6 or 7. That's kind of how the draft, I think, is right now. It's a very tight cluster of names. I've analogized it to the Owen Power draft. I think there's a lot of similarities there and similarities in how I've struggled with this draft. People we've mocked or like teased me for the variety of names I've had number 1 over the course of the year. Although this is the same, I have Reed still 1 like I did a month ago. But there have been times when I've watched Malhotra here in the postseason, and I flirted with the idea of getting him to 1. When I saw Smits in the Olympics and at times in the DEL playoffs, Alberts Smits from the Latvian defenseman from Munich, I debated getting him up to 1. It's just been that kind of draft for me. And so I think it's going to create a really interesting dynamic. And I think it creates some uncertainty in this draft going forward, is that it could kind of unfold in a bunch of different ways over the next couple of years.
It's interesting because I felt like when we talked about the draft last week, though, we all still kind of felt this is Gavin McKenna at number 1, most likely. Even though you have him ultimately on these rankings at 4, you still feel that way.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the consensus view I get, is that I feel like most evaluators still have him at 1. I don't feel they have him at 1 with a bullet, though. I think there's some uncertainty there. I think if you were betting on who the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to select at 1, that's the guy I would bet right now. I wouldn't bet my house, though. I think, there's going to be a lot of really good conversations. And I think kind of what we discussed last week is I think it all comes down to the exact evaluation. Is we all think Gavin McKenna is an excellent hockey prospect. We all think Ivar Stenberg is an excellent hockey prospect. And then it comes down to how do these players compare to some of these defensemen, to Caleb Malhotra? Where's the lines? How close is it? And then you get into the discussion of premium positions and ultimately what you want to acquire in the draft. I think the McKenna debate, comes down to, I think most people would agree, and I think we would all agree, he's the most talented player in this draft. If there's one player I think we all think is going to hit 100 points among this forward group, it's going to be him. Like this is the guy. Like he's got some special skill, special offensive instincts. And I think that's why, when you pick out 1, you want, I have a special feeling on a player. And I think he gives you that special feeling. But there are some concerns there that I think could open a door for him not going 1 as well. I do not think this is a foregone conclusion.
Did you have Corey Artie Levshunov ahead of Ivan Demidov?
I did, yeah. I didn't like Demidov's. Well, Demidov was a strange one because I didn't get an official measurement of him until basically
the week before, yeah.
The week before, and then by then I elevated him to that same grouping essentially. So yeah, and Demidov then he was 6'1" by the end of there too, kind of thing. So that was a little bit of a distinction. But yeah, no, I think it's a good conversation about those two players versus the defenseman. Are they just so skilled? I think that's more. I think I more might have overrated Lev Shunov than underrated Demidov, but I think that could be a combination of things.
Because when your list came out today, I was happy for this podcast and for our debate pieces coming up, because we actually, a year after we struggled to find any debates between our two lists, there's a lot this year. But B, that was where I think you inherit, and I know you've said that all 5 of them are close for you, that you still have to rank them. I think you inherit a lot of risk. Like, you better be sure that those 3D are all studs. And we've talked about it on the pod. I haven't been able to get there in terms of that confidence level. Like, those guys better be first pairing guys if you believe that Stenberg and McKenna can become point per game wingers. So that's kind of.
And I think.
Are you worried about that?
Oh, I have worries on all 5. I have worries on all 5 of those players. I don't think any of them are like anywhere close to where Schaefer was a year ago. You look at the last 2 times Schaefer and McKenna played on the same team was the World Juniors a year ago and the Hlinka Gretzky 16 months ago. And Schaefer is one of the youngest players in this draft class. McKenna is one of the oldest. So they were only like 2 or 3 months apart. And like, they weren't even close in terms of the impact they had on a game in both of those events. So like, I think those are 5 excellent prospects. And I think you can get Carls in there. You can get Malhotra in there. That group could be 6-7 deep for me, quite honestly. Like, those are all really excellent prospects, but they all have flaws. Carls and Malhotra. I think you have some offense concerns there. I think same thing with Smits. You're wondering how high end in Verhoff too. How high end the offense ultimately is going to be. Reed, you wonder about the defending. But Ken and Stenberg, I think you wonder. Not elite skaters for that size. Like, how does it translate? Are they going to be really good players or just great players? Like, I don't think they're for sure top point per game players. I think that's what they project as. But I think, if Reed is a 50-point or a, defenseman who can run a power play and plays 22 minutes a night, would you rather that or an 80-point winger?
The 80-point winger. My thing is that you're counting on all. Even if that feels close, you're counting on all 3 of those guys becoming that. Like, all 3 of those guys need to become 50-point guys.
Yeah. Would you rather have had Aaron Ekblad's career, or would you rather have had Panarin's career?
Panarin's, without even thinking twice.
It's interesting because Panarin has the individual accolades. Ekblad has the 2 Stanley Cups, and it's team awards, but Ekblad did play huge roles for the Panthers.
Ekblad was what, in terms of usage on that team, their number 3 defenseman?
I can pull his minutes up if you give me a second here.
After Forsling and...
In the 2 playoff runs, Ekblad averaged 22, 33, and 24. So if there was 2 guys ahead of him, that would shock me.
Jones would have been ahead of him in the second
Jones
run.
was, for sure. Yeah.
Ahead of 24?
Well, yeah. And Jones is who I have as Reed's comp right now, for what it's worth.
Jones was ahead of him. Jones was 25-30. Ekblad was 24 last year, and Forsling was 23-17.
Yeah, but I think that's and then it comes down to the McKenna Stenberg debate too, right? Like, I think Stenberg's comp is Gensel, and I think McKenna's comp is Panarin. Who would you rather have had in their career, Gensel or Panarin?
I think there you're probably leaning Panarin.
It's close.
Stanley Cups, you can make the same argument.
You can make the same argument, but and granted, you can do this for Ekblad too. I mean, Ekblad
and I have
Barkov,
Panarin over Gensel in this conversation in that way too, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think where the distinction is not that I disagree with Scott. I guess I think you could make very reasonable arguments to take Panarin's career over Ekblad's career for just the significant differential in offense and the power play impact and the top 10 scoring in some times. But I think the distinction is how close it is. Is it close enough to warrant a discussion? I feel like, I don't want to be putting words in your mouth, Scott. It feels like you don't think it's close enough to warrant a discussion.
I think it warrants a discussion. I just think there's real risk that you've that you've put too much emphasis into the positional side of it if Gavin and Stenberg both hit. Because I think odds are that all three of those defensemen aren't all going to hit. If you're really confident in those three, but it doesn't even sound like you're really confident in those 3D.
No, but I mean, I think they're high end defense prospects.
Well,
I think
is the question though, like, is the risk tied to the expectation of what McKenna is in the public's eye?
I don't know what that means by that.
So like in terms of the pressure to select the player that has been the most talked about, like, you know, in terms of like when Montreal didn't take Shane Wright, it was viewed as, oh, they're taking a risk here with the bigger winger because they're not taking the guy that everybody thought was going to be the number one guy. And so my like that's the thing is like the risk when you do the risk assessment, because I know that even in NHL, you know, like when they're having these discussions, they are talking about the public perception. They are talking about like what happens if we screw this up and we were trying to outsmart everybody and we actually didn't.
Well, I'm not putting myself in John Chayka's shoes in the management of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm just telling you guys what I think the groupings are in terms of talent for this draft. What Toronto wants to do in their position is their decision.
Well, my question was more directed at Scott though, in terms of like the risk assessment. Like, do you feel like there's less risk in McKenna?
I don't think you have to calculate the public perception into that risk necessarily. Like, I haven't considered that in my list. Ultimately, I mean, I've been very, very critical of Gavin and his flaws and the play off the puck and the detail and the laziness, and all of that is still very much a part of the conversation with Gavin. But he has still, like, I think we've gotten to the point, and Gavin and Shane Wright are not even close as prospects for me. Right. But I think we've gotten to the point where we've picked Gavin apart to pieces and lost sight of what this kid has accomplished in the WHL, in college hockey. Even Corey going back to those two Hockey Canada events. Well, the third Hockey Canada event before that, he was better than Porter Martone as an underager at U18 Worlds and led the team to a gold medal and scored a hat trick a natural hat trick in the third period of the gold medal game. Like, we have to remember all of this with Gavin, and I think it's super popular amongst scouts, amongst agents, amongst people around college hockey that I've talked to really beat up on this kid. And some of it is warranted, but Gavin is still a premier talent. Like, I don't think this, from a skill standpoint, this is a player that actually comes with all that much risk. I think the risk is in how much of a negative he's going to be defensively. That's what you calculate into it. I'm less worried about Gavin in terms of the offense, the power play. Like, I think that ship has sailed. He has produced in line with players who, and you can see it in the playmaking, the vision, the skill level, the touch on the puck, the way he thinks it. Like, there are premium tools there still, even if you hate the off puck game.
You say he's not close to Shane Wright. Is that not like a little revisionist? Like, didn't you have Wright 1 on your list? Do you think there was like that big a distinction from the two of them at the same point? Yeah, I had Wright, Cooley, Nemec 1, 2, 3 on my list. I also don't think any of those players are cool. Like, I think he's a way better prospect than Slavkovsky was, a better prospect than Cooley was, a better prospect than Wright was, a better prospect than Nemec. I missed on Shane Wright at 1. Like, I missed on that. But is he way better? Is he way better than Cooley? Like, that's a. I think Cooley's become one hell of a hockey player.
He's saying at the time of the draft. He's saying
at the time of the draft. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I think just to kind of put a bow on this, I think what it comes out from what I'm hearing, Corey, is, to me, it sounds like your hesitance kind of comes down to when you have these, in most cases, like kind of big bodied defensemen who you feel like you have a pretty high floor. It's kind of a downside argument, right? Like, I know you've used the name Drouin as a downside risk comparable for McKenna. And if it's Drouin or kind of your average top four, right? Or well, that's extreme downside.
It's not even close. It is not even close. Nail Yakupov and Gavin McKenna.
Let's say Drouin, but like Drouin are just kind of your average, top four right shot
Drouin
D.
was the best player in the
Drouin
CHL.
was electric. He was electric.
That's right.
Yeah.
So let's use that one. If it's Drouin or kind of your average top four right shot D, what's the value discrepancy there? That seems like the most compelling argument against McKenna to me.
Yeah, and I also think even in the best case, like I think if McKenna's like an 80, 90 point wing, or Stenberg's like this 70, 80 point hard to play against wing, and Smits becomes Cider, like I think that's
really
extreme
upside for Smits. You, at that point, you're taking upside for Smits and not ups. I guess you got to take an upside for McKenna.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, is it that outrageous? You look at what Smits has done this year. Look at what Cider did in his draft year. Like, there's a lot of analogies you can make. I think Smits is not as physical. He's a little smaller. Might have a little bit more offense at the same age than Cider did. But I think like that's like I feel like if you can get like a 50, 45 point defenseman who plays heavy minutes. Like, I feel like that's a massive piece. And I feel like if you were in the Maple Leafs position, and this is going to come up Malhotra, I actually get more people in the league who say they think Malhotra's can go 1 than they do any of these defensemen for what it's worth. I think there's excessive interest in this player, and there's a lot of people who are advocating for him at the top. But like the argument will come down to, in the offseason, what would Toronto have a harder time finding? Would they have a harder time finding a guy like Malhotra, or like a guy like Chase Reed or Smits, or they have a harder time finding someone like Ivor Stenberg? And I think, I guess your opinion of Darren Radish and Rasmus Anderson may vary, but I would probably argue you looked at last offseason where Marner and Ehlers hit free agency, where Panarin just got traded. I feel like people would argue that's the easier piece to find. But it all comes down to how close it is. I keep saying this over and over again. People probably think I'm just beating a dead horse here. But again, if you don't think it's close, take the winger. No issues. I have wingers ahead of centers. Like eventually it gets to a point where you got to take the better player. But as I said in the intro to the column, I think it's basically a 5-way tie between the 5 players I have, and then those 6, 7 players I have it makes it a near 7-way tie, honestly, for me. So
I felt it was a 4-way tie in the Wright draft, though, and at the end of the day, Wright was still 1 on my list, and you have to live with that.
I'm living.
Nobody remembers that I thought that Logan Cooley and Shane Wright were neck and neck, or that Simon Nemec and Shane.
No, but I think what Corey's saying is like, don't take this to mean he's so down on McKenna and Stenberg. He's saying it's one big group, and if you don't have it as one big group, you obviously take the guys you have above that group. I think that's the point. Yeah.
You know what I've been hearing this whole time? We don't have a number 1 pick in this draft, which I said in January. And I think that is what a great year, Toronto fans, to have a number 1 pick. Because quite frankly, like I think a lot of these guys are very good prospects. They're all very good prospects. There is not a single one in this whole group, including McKenna, that I feel great about. And that's a hard place to be when you are picking one. Because I think there are guys that you could talk yourself into enough and you're going to feel fine. But this class is the challenge of this class is that there is mud everywhere. There is absolute mud that decreases the clarity of where these guys are going to end up.
Would anybody here go back to the 23 draft and take any of these players at this current point to Fantilli or Leo Carlsson at the same point in their draft seasons?
No.
I don't think so.
Fantilli produced virtually identically, if not better, than McKenna and is like a 6'2" powerful center.
Yeah. He produced better.
I can see Scott's face. He's struggling with this question right now.
I'd probably have them in the same tier. I'm not sure how I would have them slotted, but I would probably have Stenberg and McKenna at least in the same tier as those two kids.
As Carlsson, too.
As Carlsson.
At the time of the draft.
And Fantilli at the time of the draft.
Yeah, the time of the draft was different. Yeah.
Stenberg also had, I know, obviously, I wrote this in my mailbag, that you'd still take Carlsson over Stenberg a couple of weeks ago because of the size and the skating and the position. Stenberg had a better draft year at the World Juniors and with the senior men's team based off what we've seen so far and in the SHL than Leo Carlsson.
Different level of hockey sense. I mean, Stenberg's skill, competitor are outstanding. Carlsson, like a different level of hockey sense. Fair to say.
Yeah, and he's 6'3" and
plays center, all that.
Yeah,
I think just by starting from the place of if you think it's close, take the D. I do think that people talk themselves into taking D. Is sort of the point I was trying to make. Like, it's the same reason you rank Artie Levshunov ahead of Ivan Demidov, and then 3 years later, it's no longer close, right? So I guess that's where I started this conversation. That's the point I'm trying to hammer home.
Let's put a pin in the D, because we're going to come back to that next segment. We're going to do a whole dive on the D in this class. One more name, Corey, I want to get on your new rankings and your new mock draft is Ethan Belchetz, a guy who earlier this year we were talking about toward the very top of this draft. In your latest ranking, he's at number 13. That's lower than I mean, I know he didn't play late in the year because of the injury, but that's lower than I expected to see him.
Yeah, and he had kind of an up and down season. More towards the second half before he got hurt. He was being productive and being a really important part of Windsor winning a lot of games. He had some tough stretches there. Didn't have a great Holinka Gretzky in the summer. Didn't have a great CHL NTDP series in November. I think there were some concerns on. I mean, there's only been a little bit of concerns on his pace, but I still thought you still saw a really skilled, big, powerful, physical winger. I think as the season went on, I think there were some questions on just how high end is the skill here. Now, I think in 6 months ago, people thought, yeah, there's a little bit of warts here, but man, like he's got a lot of skill and he's so big and like it's still a premium piece. I think that's going to be what people are going to wrestle with. Is a good skill? Is it top 6 skill? I think that's, I think when you, not to be lazy, but because he played on the same OHL team, but I think you can compare him to like to Ilya Protas or Alexei Protas. Ilya Protas played on Windsor, not Alexei, and probably say that he's not as skilled as Ilya, but he probably has a little bit more jam in his game. And that's still a pretty good prospect. Is it an elite prospect? Probably not, but that's kind of where I think he fits. The other thing I think that hurts him is a little bit is you have these other players like Gleb Pugachev in Russia and particularly Oscar Hemming in college who have kind of emerged as these big physical power wingers over the course of the season. And I think for teams that will prioritize those traits, I think it gives them some more choices in that range of the draft as well.
I think what surprised me is like it's now getting to the area where it's like where Branson Nygaard and Carter Bear went, and certainly those are good prospects, but I think Belchetz has more offense and more size than both. Maybe not more offense as Bear, but
yeah, not as good a skater as them though. I think his skating is going to be an issue for some people.
Yeah, that's fair.
I do think Bear's skating is a bit of an issue too, but
yeah, and he's a guy though. Like Belchetz is one of those guys where I could easily see a team snapping him up earlier than the teens, or in that 10 to 15 range, closer to 10. But he was a tough eval this year too, because I think last year we saw some more of that aggression and just more of that nastiness. And this year I felt like he played with less of that and played almost more into the skill game. And I felt like he lost his identity a little bit as a player. Like he was not a factor in that NTDP challenge at all. And that was a game where you say, there's going to be some snarl. There's going to be some nastiness. He's going to thrive in that environment. And both he and Rubrek could barely get on the ice in that game. Two big guys. So yeah, he's an interesting one for this class for sure.
To Chris's point, I have still talked to teams that have him in the 6 to 10 range. I think that was like a unanimous opinion 4 months ago. I don't think it's unanimous anymore, but I still think that he's being discussed in that area.
All right, let's take a quick break right there. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the D class this year in the first round. Be right back. All right, we are back, and we're going to talk about what I think is the strength of this class, Corey, and that's the D crop. All cycle, I feel like we've talked about this as a cluster of 5 guys at the top between Keaton Verhoff, Chase Reed, Alberts Smits, Daxon Rudolph, and Carson Karls. I see where you've mocked Malte Gustafsson and ranked Malte Gustafsson this week, though. Is this now becoming a cluster of 6 names at the top?
Yes. I think after his performance at the U18 Worlds, where I think you could argue he was the best defenseman there, I think in the game against Canada, he was clearly better than Keaton Verhoff in that game. I think he is now in that conversation. I think for a lot of people, they see now a 6'4" mobile 2-way defenseman. The offense this season in Sweden wasn't great. He played on some bad teams. I think both his SHL team and his J20 team were both sent to the relegation round. You can argue whether he should have helped those teams more or whatever, but that's a legit argument. But what he showed at the U18s, I think, swayed a lot of people and swayed me. That I don't think this is a power play guy in the NHL, but I think you look at this guy and you compare him, whether it is to someone like, think of other Swedish defensemen, be it someone like Simon Edvinsson at the same age, or some Philip Broberg maybe. Like, I don't think there's some distinctions there between them, but like, he's not quite as fast as Broberg, he's not quite as skilled or as big as Edvinsson, but I think 6'10", 6'12", I think he's going to fit into that area. Just the athleticism he has, the minutes he showed he could play, that he could make a play with the puck. I think he definitely is now in that conversation if you want that flavor of defenseman.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, he's a guy that really popped in that tournament, and I think it's one of ththose times where the under 18s where you get to see a couple of guys on the same ice surface together, and you see the differences. And yeah, I agree. Like, he was better than Verhoff in that game. And the thing that I'll say, like, I still think that he would be at the very back end of that that group for me. But at the same time, the fact that he's probably moved ahead of the guys like the Belchetz and others that are moving down the board as a result, I think there's every reason to believe that he could, sneak up there, and, could he potentially go ahead of Viggo Bjork? Is there things like, those kinds of things? I could see that happening. I think there's, the size, the mobility. The thing that stood out to me at the under 18s is I thought he played most like a man compared to his peers. And there was a real almost swagger to how he was playing at that level. And I didn't see that from a lot of, the other top end guys in that tournament.
By the end of the tournament there, like, he was on the ice every second shift. Like, you got to the Holinka where Axel Elofsson was actually their leader in ice time on that team that won to the gold medal game.
Elofsson was their number 7.
Yeah, he played 8 minutes in the gold medal game, and they just kept rolling. They just kept rolling Gustafsson and Mans Gudmundsson pretty much every second shift. Like, there was the utmost trust in him, where it felt like the rest of that blue line did not have anywhere close to that level of trust.
Corey said something interesting, Scott, about how, Gustafsson, he's not going to be like the power play guy. It kind of makes me think, so let's kind of, for people who are checking into the draft now, it's draft season, let's kind of typecast the profiles of these top 6D here. So every team might be looking for a different thing in the defenseman they're targeting at the top of the draft. Who fits in what bucket, Scott?
Reed is the premium offensive guy, despite the fact that his production never got to that, like, Ryan Ellis, Zane Parekh level in the OHL. Reed is the premium offensive skating, big shot, moves the puck, transporter. That's Reed's game. The defending for Reed has actually come a long way, and I've spoken to a lot of people around the OHL about that. He earned a lot of respect this year, and he was second amongst his conference in defensive defenders in the OHL coaches poll, which surprised some people. Smits, I think you're just expecting him to be a sort of all situations type. Carl's, same thing, all situations type. Carl's has the hardness, the skating, the competitiveness, also has the shot. Rudolph, I think, will be more, despite the fact that he's playing huge minutes in the WHL, I think will be more of an offensive lean guy than a sort of true shutdown guy. Doesn't have maybe that hardness that a Smits or a Carl's can have. Gustafsson's a two-way type. I think the Broberg is more apt than the Edvinsson. Like, Edvinsson broke some ankles in his draft year in the SHL that season and made some like high-level skill plays. I haven't quite seen that from Malte.
Allsvenskan, not SHL.
Yes, in Allsvenskan. But he's the two-way profile. Like, I don't think he's going to be a premium guy on whatever team he ends up, but he's the sort of top 4 projection.
Corey, any disagreements with kind of those buckets or distinctions you want to draw?
I didn't mention Verhoff.
Yeah.
I still don't know what box Verhoff fits into, if I'm being completely honest.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think like Verhoff and Smits are like the athlete bucket, where like they just have so many tools, the size, the skating, the skill.
Corey and I have a
the-
big gap on the skating with Verhoff. I do not see him as an athletic skater at all.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of how I view the buckets there. Like I think him and Smits just have like the tools. Like they're just so toolsy and talented, and great body of work. I think they are not like, I think with Carls you could hang your hat on. He's the toughest to play against among this group. With Reed and Rudolph, you can hang your hat on. Like they might have like high end skill. I think other than their shots, I don't know if Verhoff and Smits have like high end traits, but I think the collection of traits are really impressive. And it's a fascinating debate because I think throughout the season, I can talk to a bunch of people in the league and who have a different person at one. I think I have talked to pretty much everybody at some point, at least one scout, and usually multiple, that have had Smits, Rudolph, Verhoff, Carls, or Reed as their best defenseman in this draft. I have talked to teams that have had Carls, Reed, Smits, and Verhoff at some point in the season at number one overall on their list at some point this season. Like it's a really fascinating conversation, which gets to our previous segment, which is this is kind of a bucket, and when it's a bucket, how you break ties and how you delineate could make for things that might seem strange to some, but not strange to others. So I think I think you're going to see teams come out of the meetings and they might have things in a significantly different order than how we have things, just because I think it's a tight group, but that's the draft.
Well, that's interesting. 'Cause to me, when I hear that there's been 4 different guys, was it 4 different guys you said have been ranked number 1 by at least some team at some point in this class?
Yes.
So like when I hear that, I think, okay, so are there 4 potential number 1 defensemen in this class? Like that would be a little bit anomalous. It has happened before, but it would be a little anomalous.
Yeah, but so go back to the Power draft. Is Power number 1 defenseman right now?
I wouldn't say so.
Is Evanson number 1 defenseman?
No, he's a 2.
Is Beniers number 1 center?
No.
Probably fringy, but more of a 2.
Not on a good team.
Is Luke Hughes number 1 defenseman?
No.
Is Mason McTavish number 1 center?
No. I get your point here. I see where you're going.
Is Brant Clark anywhere close to number 1 defenseman?
No, I get your point. I mean, I guess I'm thinking back and like there are
Brant
drafts.
had an excellent year.
18 draft, and you get Dahlin, Hughes, Dobson, Bouchard. Like you're making the case that you have 4 number 1 defensemen in a draft, even though Dobson isn't the number 1 D on Montreal. I think he's that level, even if it's a little fringy. Like I guess that's what I'm asking. Are we at that level of class, or are we talking about more of the Owen Power draft?
It's probably somewhere in between. Like I think you still like a lot of these players. Like I would, like I have Reed, Smits, and Verhoff projected as top pair defensemen. So, and I have Carl's kind of on the fringe there. So I think if you look at just the odds of how you think of what expected outcomes are, you would think probably one of those guys are going to underwhelm significantly. One of those guys probably becomes number 1, and like the other 2 probably become like 22 to 21 minutes night guys who help a team but are not like like stars or whatever. So like I think the fair expectations. So probably somewhere between those 2 drafts.
There's a couple players that we were talking about early in the year that I expected to really dominate our debate come this time of year. And that was Ryan Lynn and Xavier Villeneuve. Lynn, I think we're still going to be talking plenty about. I mean, Scott, I know has him. Do you have him above Gustafsson, Scott?
I do.
Right. So Scott would have him closer to that top cluster. But Villeneuve, Corey, has kind of fallen out of the conversation here. Where did Villeneuve slip out of this, and where are you at with Lynn at this point?
I mean, you guys remember me talking to you about him 9 months ago. I was like a Villeneuve super fan coming into this season. This was such a hard evaluation for me, and I was so reluctant to get him to where I ended on him because I wanted to love him, because I would say after McKenna and Stenberg, he's probably the most purely offensively talented player in this class. Does that offend anybody here?
Not at all.
Yeah. Like his skating, his skill, his offensive hockey sense. Like he's like I see people online comparing him to Lane Hudson, and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't. Like I see where you're going with that. Like the way he dances on the blue line and I don't think he sees the ice like Lane does. I don't think he can hit the seam passes and like he does. It's a little bit more individualistic, but I understand that. It's like, I think to me, it comes down to the defending and the compete. Like he's got some significant defensive issues. Like he really struggles to make stops at the QMJHL level. He really doesn't ever. I think that when we saw him at the CHL NTDP series, that's like one of the first times I've actually seen him play the body all season. Like in the Q, he just doesn't do that. I think there's going to be like some major concerns on how he projects at the NHL level. But what I was thinking about with Villeneuve and Lynn, and maybe even Villeneuve and Tommy Blyle to an extent, was, coming out of their draft seasons, we saw Seamus Casey and Lane Hudson on the NTDP.
Yeah.
And I don't know where you guys ended with them, but I think I had Lane like in the 20s and Casey like around the 30s or the 40s kind of thing. But it's like kind of like, well, one of these two are probably going to play. I don't know which one. Obviously, didn't know that one was going to become a superstar. But you thought like there's some risks here, and that's probably how it's going to be with Villeneuve and Blyle and Moncton. I probably think like one of those two are going to play. You could lump in Lynn with them, and I think Lynn's the likeliest to play because I think he defends the hardest, and like there's more to his game. That's kind of how I feel. Like with Villeneuve, like if he just played a little harder, man, he'd be like top 20 on my list. But like his physicality, especially as a scrawny 5'11" defenseman, like it's a significant concern for me.
I have had people use Seamus, like I've had people in the queue use Seamus Casey for Tommy Blyle in terms of just a parallel. I was actually surprised when you had Blyle as a below average skater because when I was flipping through
Are you
this morning,
serious?
because I think Blyle is a phenomenal skater.
Well, that was a typo. That's not how I feel. So
I was like, that's like the hallmark of his game.
Thank you for pointing that out to me on this podcast kind of thing. So,
oh, sorry.
Oh, well, yeah, that'll need to be fixed. But the thing about the other thing I'll say about Villeneuve too is like I actually thought earlier in the year he played more aggressive. I thought that there was more jam, and that showed up a little bit more in that CHL NTDP series. So that was definitely a big one for where he showed a little bit more snarl compared to what you would normally see from him do. But yes, I would agree. Like he missed a chunk of the season with injury, comes back, and it was very up and down. I mean, like that whole Blainville team was up and down, and they had a lot of injury issues over the course of the season.
I thought he was going to have 100 points this season.
Like, I thought
too.
I thought he
was going to tear up that league, and he just didn't. Like he had a good year, but he basically like it was below expectations. I think.
And the thing is when you take a step back from the high expectations that you set, it's like the same. We'll have I don't know if we'll ever get around to it, but like Ryan Robrek is a guy who it's hard to produce less in your draft year than you normally would and have positive results long term. So I think that's the other thing that's tough. But Blyle is a really interesting one because he had the season that I was expecting Villeneuve to have and was far better for the larger chunk of the season. And on top of that, has been amazing in the playoffs.
I can't believe he's going back to the Q next year. Like he's like,
is he?
Well, that he apparently is, but like, I don't know. Like, I feel like there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better place for him to play. Like, than going back there again. Like after how good he was, but maybe it's the same with Villeneuve. Maybe he has 60 points next year. We're all like tearing him apart.
We're like,
now,
whoops, we screwed up.
All right, two more names that I want to get to in this class. Corey, I'm going to give you Adam Goljer, and then Scott, why don't you take William Hakansson? Corey, you go first with Goljer.
Officially named the best defenseman in the U18s, although I wonder if there was a little home country bias there. But he was really good there. Like 6'1" right shot, skates well, moves the puck well, competes well. This is a guy now who's was a World Junior player for Slovakia, was good versus men in Slovakia this past season. Just checks a lot of boxes. Like he's a little boring in some ways, but like Oliver Bonk was a little boring too in some ways. And I think there's you can maybe connect the dots a little bit there in terms of how they are as pro prospects. just like steady, dependable, two-way, not really physical, but he works. And I think coaches will trust him. And I think there's a spot for him in the NHL, even though I don't know if he's going to be like this massive offensive producer. I just think every time I watch him, he plays well. Is he a star? No, but he's a good player. And I think he's going to have a career in the NHL.
Scott, how about Hakansson?
Hakansson's an interesting one because he's 6'4" and 200 plus pounds, and he's played a lot of pro hockey at an early age. He's a late birthday in this draft class, which helps in terms of making that jump to the pro level a little bit earlier, and that size piece of the puzzle that he already has. It was a tough go for him. He started the year sort of splitting time between the SHL and the J20, and then he finished the year in the Allsvenskan before coming back to the SHL for the playoffs. In the Allsvenskan portion of that season, there were some tough nights. The production sort of came a little bit more, which I think people were hoping to see, but there were some tough nights defensively, and he just didn't look himself and didn't play well. His stock has trended down in the second half. I think heading into the World Juniors, where he also didn't play a prominent role for Sweden, heading into the World Juniors, he was viewed as the first round pick in this draft class, and I think that's now not necessarily a sure thing. I think he still probably goes there because of the size, but big kid, moves fairly well. The competitiveness and the physicality are a little bit more inconsistent than scouts would like it to be. Like, he has high PIM totals, and you look at his profile and you think, oh, this kid's probably mean. And I don't think that's really what he is. That's not a huge part of his identity. But he's competitive enough. He's physical enough. He's solid defensively. I don't think there's going to be a lot of offense there, but he projects to play in the league with his athletic profile.
His offensive profile is interesting. I agree with you. I don't think he's like super smart. I don't think he's a puck play guy. But if you look at his underage numbers, he did point in the J20 level. And when he went down there for a few games this year, he pointed as well. So I think there's inconsistencies in his game. But it's a really intriguing profile and track record. And if you look at like making Sweden's World Junior team, and that wasn't a bad World Junior team. They won gold medal. Like you look at the track record of defensemen who make that team, like they're all like top 15 picks. Like it's like there's like schmucks don't make that team as a draft eligible.
Yeah.
So like I'll be really fascinated to see how his career goes.
Any names that I didn't bring up, Chris, to Scott and Corey there that you feel belong in the first round of this class, or did we kind of? I mean, I think we'll include Blyle and Villeneuve that we talked about them, but any other names besides them?
Yeah, no, I don't. Nobody that really stands out, specifically to me, that we didn't bring up. But yeah, I mean, I think that this only further proves that I think that there's the strength of the class is on the blue line. There's a lot. The thing that I think is great about this class is the variety that you can get out of it. The different players, the different kinds of guys that can kind of fit into a bunch of different things, which is to say, I also don't think that we see like there's not a lot of excitement among the forwards as you get further and further down the board. So I think that, we'll probably see a pretty steady chunk of defensemen go in the first round. We probably covered, the most likely guys, and, could anybody else sneak in there? I'm not, I'm sure there could be a one or two.
I do think it's notable. We didn't mention Juho Pipparainen, who coming out of Helinka last summer was viewed as like a lock first rounder. And Corey mentioned a couple of he could still go in the first round, but Corey mentioned a couple of the Diaz vanilla, and I'm not sure there is a more vanilla player in this class than Juho Pipparainen, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but yeah.
I know Scott squirmed when I mentioned Yakupov earlier, but in the Yakupov draft, we had a winger go 1, and then I think 8 of the top 10 picks in that class were defensemen, just as an FYI.
Be careful, Corey. People are going to start thinking you think McKenna is Yakupov, and you're going to get it.
I'm actually starting that. I'm starting that.
But I will say I would challenge Scott's.
It's also one of the worst drafts in NHL history.
Yeah. I thought when I saw Yakupov that year, I thought he was like a monster. Like he was so dominant in Sarnia. Those 2 years he was there. Like there was no way he was going to miss. And then obviously,
he missed.
It happens.
Yep. He missed pretty big. Yeah. There was a whole lot of missing in that class.
All right. Let's take a break right there. We're going to come back. We haven't done a mailbag, I feel like, in months. So we've got a few in there, and be excited to get your thoughts on. Be right back. All right, we are back, and we've got a mailbag, round of mailbag questions here. Scott, we're going to start with this one from Liam Gutman. Will teams be targeting both Ruck twins in this draft? And this is parts from me. Is there anyone that could actually pull that off? It seems like they're both kind of going to go late first. Maybe a team that has some bonus picks.
I think one of them almost certainly goes second. I think there's a chance both go second. I've got a feature coming out on the Rucks at The Athletic in the next couple of weeks here, and I have talked to them and some people around them about this. They have not been shy to tell teams that it is really what they want. Like, they haven't. There's something to modesty in these interviews, but the way they thought about it was, we're not going to lie and pretend like us going to a different organization is what we want. If it goes that way, they will go their separate ways, and these aren't kids who are going to put up a stink or try to force their way back together or that kind of a thing. But I think it's going to be a big part of the combine process for them. They're going to be pretty upfront with teams that they want to make it happen. I know that college teams are all over them, and that they're likely going to do visits here now that Medicine Hat's out of the WHL playoffs. So they're going to continue going the college route together. I know that they haven't closed the book on Medicine Hat either. Return to Medicine Hat is very much potentially in the cards for them. Medicine Hat still actually has some really good young players that they could potentially reload around next year. But I think there's a real chance that it happens and that a team makes it happen for them. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad move by that team, or that team trying to pick whichever team considers that. I don't think it's necessarily we're doing these kids a favor. Like, there are plenty of teams. The Vancouver Canucks have a late first round pick and the 33rd overall pick. Like, when I was looking at my mock draft, I think there's 4 or 5 teams with a late first and an early second. Like, it's very possible that someone makes that happen for them. So I really don't think it's out of the question that they end up together.
All right, next one is from Carl Milok. I'm actually going to take this one. How should Detroit handle its goalie prospect situation? Someone has to get moved, right? That's certainly the way that people in the game think this is headed. I think specifically with Sebastian Cossa, who has not played in any of their 4 postseason games thus far. Michael Postava coming, I don't want to say out of nowhere. He won the Czech League championship last year, but for an undrafted player that was signed to have now fully taken over the net, he's got great numbers. He was like 40 minutes of game time this regular season from being eligible for and thus winning the save percentage and goals against titles. He's emerged. Like, I do have some questions, Chris. I know you've probably been watching this series because of the Flow Hockey ties here. Like, Postava's been excellent in the series. I do still wonder, like, he's on the smaller side. He's a great athlete, and it's working for him right now. My only question is, like, is this a guy who is at the level of Cossa or Augustine to be kind of having that conversation, or are we overreacting to Sample here?
Yeah, I feel it's partially a little bit of an overreaction to Sample, but I think you also have to see, we can see, we have eyes, like, he is playing outstanding. I think that there's definitely a correlation to success in the AHL, and that translating. I think we've seen guys, obviously, different size profiles and other things like that, like Devin Cooley, who's excelled. Artie Seelovs last year, for Abbotsford, he's had up and down results in the NHL. But I think that what is striking to me is, Cossa has been the good soldier for all this time, and they come down to the biggest time and he loses his job. I mean, it's curtains. I mean, that's it. Like, I don't know how you come back from that. I don't know how you as an organization, come back from that as all that investment in that development, and your only hope now, like, Cossa was an AHL All-Star this year.
Last 2 years, consecutive AHL All-Star appearances.
I mean, and the thing is that you have to continue. Like, if you can get better, this is pro hockey. If you can get better, you get better. And Postava has been the guy that's been better, and he gives them a chance to win the Calder Cup. They're probably now the favorite to win the Calder Cup, given their status as the team with the best record remaining and how they've played throughout the year. So they're in a real pickle here. I would say, like, in terms of pure upside, I still view Augustine and Cossa as the better upside goalies. But now I think whatever plan there was with Cossa now is over.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just what it is.
I tend to agree. My only question is like, so I view like if you're an optimist on Postava, I think you're hoping that he's Alex Lyon or Jet Greaves, and those are like good NHL goalies.
Yes.
Is that enough to kind of give up on the first round pick on one hand? On the other hand, do you really have a choice after everything that's happened? And they got to get better. You have all these goalie prospects. Like trading one is probably the best path to getting better.
Yeah.
And he's going to hit waivers this next fall too.
He has to be on someone's NHL roster next year.
Yes, exactly. So, and I think, unfortunately, it seems like the Detroit Red Wings just developed a player for somebody else. And I do think they're going to have to move on. I think he's going to have to move on. I think, the succession plan, I think you give Augustine almost the entire year in the A next year. You get him on. He's your guy. I think I thought he was their guy 2 years ago.
Agreed.
It's just the way that it is. And it's unfortunate, because I give Sebastian all the credit in the world, ECHL to AHL, biding his time, waiting, getting better, doing all the things he had to do. But again, it's that nature of pro hockey. If there is someone better, we will take someone better. And that's what's happened right now.
All right. Next one's for Corey. Jeff Greibel wants to know, when teams consistently find players who outperform their draft position, he's referencing Dallas, Tampa, Carolina. How much of that do you attribute to great scouting? And how much do you attribute to development, environment, and kind of the fit? Like, are there teams that are just better at maximizing talent, or are these teams better at finding talent?
Can I pick door number 3?
Yes.
I think they're just the luckiest teams.
Ooh.
Like I have never seen an organization show repeatable skill in this area. I love Dallas's drafts. I mean, obviously I was a huge, love Wyatt Johnston, love Jason Robertson and Rupe Hintz. Like their farm system's terrible right now. Like there's nothing there at the moment. I don't know. Like,
sure about that?
Like, what else is what is there that you love so much?
I mean, I don't think there are stars there, but I think there's a lot of NHL players there.
A lot of NHL players?
A lot of NHL in Dallas's system?
I don't see it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's also they've also been one of the best teams in terms of signing undrafted free agents lately and developing them at the AHL level.
Yeah,
I actually do think
I didn't think Herkwanian was ever going to be close to what he was. So I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, that's like Hritskovian. There's another Hritskovian now. There's a number of guys that I think will matriculate to their NHL roster from the Texas Stars this year. But I mean, I agree. I think in general, you're going to have stretches where you've had good stretches of drafting, but I do think there are some teams that have better development setups than others. I think Dallas is one of them. But
you have some of the best draft classes all time. You have the Dallas 2017 draft. And you go out to the Montreal draft where they got Subban, Pacioretty, and McDonough all in the same draft, and that was one of the greatest draft classes of all time. And then for pretty much 10 years after that, they couldn't find anything in the draft.
Right,
and their first round was just completely awful after that. So I think despite how we argue, I'm a Carroll's guy, I'm a Smits guy, I'm a McKenna guy, whatever kind of thing. None of us are geniuses. We all kind of know who the good players are. We have them all roughly in the same order, minus some minor deviations. Nobody's smarter than anybody else. This is not some sort of advanced science. It's watching hockey players.
Yeah. One thing to Corey's point, so you got Montreal is one of the teams mentioned. They've had some real finds there. The biggest, of course, is Lane Hudson, right? But if Montreal really knew Lane Hudson was going to be this, they're not taking Philip Machar and Owen Beck ahead of him, right? That's part of this for sure.
They took Machar in the first round.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
And he was small too. What's going on over there?
One of the worst picks of that draft in hindsight.
Yeah. And it's just, no, it's funny. But to Corey's point, if there was anybody that was smarter than anybody else, to be the richest person in the NHL, like clearly, repeatably smarter. There are some really great scouts. There are some really great player development people. There are people that are definitely above average, but I don't think that there's tons of separation when you're doing predictions, essentially.
Yeah. All right, Chris, this one's for you. It's from Ari. He says, how would you rate Alberts Smits' decision-making or hockey IQ? We hear about his tools, speed, athleticism, but I wonder if the hockey IQ is present as well in a way that can translate to him getting better. What's his ceiling?
Yeah, so I think he has it in the basic sense of he knows what plays to make, when to make them, and I think he executes them adequately. Like, I wouldn't say it's like a standout tool for him, but he is absolutely a player that I think he has a mature decision making and processing, kind of skill, in that he kind of takes a lot. He doesn't overdo it. I don't think there's any creativity there, like in terms of, is he going to make these, outstanding plays and reads that are going to take you, surprise you. I don't think that that's it. I don't think that he's overtly predictable or anything like that either. But, I just think that it's adequate at worst, I think that's but the thing is this is a guy that has played at the Olympics. He's going to play at the World Championships. He's played in high level playoffs. Like, I think he thinks the game like a pro already. And more, it's just going to be adjusting each time he goes to a different place, adjusting to the pace, adjusting to the pressure, those things. And I don't really have much concern about him processing the game at an NHL speed. So to me, it's not a standout trait. It's not a detrimental trait. It's just, at worst adequate. So, I think when you combine that with the athleticism that he has showcased, I think that's a good enough thing, good enough for him to be a higher end, defenseman, a guy that could be a top 4, playing a lot of minutes in a lot of different roles. I think, he does everything pretty much at a pro level.
All right, we'll close with this one, Corey, from Nabil Raymond. He says, for months, we've talked about how underwhelming this NTDP team was. That's true. We have talked about that. Now, all of a sudden, Corey has 2 in his top 12. That's Wyatt, Cullen, and Casey Mutryn. He says, what's changed in their projection, especially Mutryn? And you had Mutryn going 21 in your last mock, but you have him, I think, ranked, 12 on your latest ranking?
Yeah, I think their international tournaments were good. Like the February tournament, the NTDP played well. I thought Mutryn and Cullen both looked very good in February. They both looked very good in April. I think with Cullen, obviously, we're talking about the significant physical growth, just one of the youngest players of the draft, how much he's grown as a player, the dynamic traits there. With Mutryn, I see a guy who's, plays all situations, top power play on that team, kills penalties, captain, highly physical, 6'3", skates well. I think the offense and the production there is a question. I think it's a question for a lot of people. If I look at the body of work there, strong underage numbers, made the U18 team as an underage, a guy who still was, I think, one of the leading scorers on an underwhelming, mind you, NTDP team this year. I think there's just a lot to like, and I think there's I look at him versus Oscar Hemming. I don't see a massive difference in how they play in the toolkits.
He'll be a good one for our debates later, because I see a big gap between Mutryn and Hemming, and I actually think Mutryn and Ryder Cali, who I think is in like the 40s on Corey's list, are closer for me than I would have Mutryn with the Hemming types.
Well, I will look forward to hearing that debate as we go on. That is going to do it for us today. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Athletic Hockey Show Prospect Series. Remember, you can catch more of Chris over at Flow Hockey and on his podcast Called Up. Be back with you soon. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell to stay informed and catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And in the meantime, you can join our Discord community. We'll see you there.